Fantastic. And a wonderful opportunity to enjoy that video and Adeline Wiley's beautiful dancing again. Thank you. I'd like to begin the homily today with a poem titled The Winter of Listening by David White, and I'll put a link in the chat later. No one but me by the fire. My hands burning, red in the palms, while the night wind carries everything away outside. All this petty worry, while the great cloak of the sky grows dark and intense round every living thing. What is precious inside us does not care to be known by the mind in ways that diminish its presence. What we strive for in perfection is not what turns us into the lit angel we desire. What sustains and nourishes has everything we need. What we hate in ourselves is what we cannot know in ourselves, but what is true to the pattern does not need to be explained. Inside everyone is a great shout of joy waiting to be born. Even with the summer so far off, I feel it grown in me now and ready to arrive in the world. All those years listening to those who had nothing to say. All those years forgetting how everything has its own voice to make itself heard. All those years forgetting how easily you can belong to everything simply by listening. And the slow difficulty of remembering how everything is born from an opposite and miraculous otherness. Silence and winter has led me to that otherness. So let this winter of listening be enough for the new life I must call my own. It felt appropriate to start today with a poem because perhaps out of our many various ways words can be put together and the purposes to which they can be employed, more than any, poems need space. Poems need stillness. They are a kind of balance between stillness and action, the thing itself and everything around it. And in that way, we are more like poems than news reports. Even if our lives look more like the news ticker scrolling across the bottom of the screen while a news anchor speaks over graphics that are relaying information and our phone is buzzing with notifications and reminders about the next thing to do, the next problem to solve. And the faster things come at us, the more we need the ability to pause. Here are a couple of the frameworks that have been helpful to me in carving out opportunities in which to put the world on Do Not Disturb. The poet John Keats said in a letter, negative capability is when one is capable of being in uncertainties, mysteries, doubts, without any irritable reaching after fact and reason. And this idea of negative capability is one that I read about and learned about when I was doing my poet life, when I was in my Master of Fine Arts program back in my first career as a poet. Very lucrative business, that poetry. And I loved this idea of negative capability, being in uncertainty, being amid mystery and doubt, without any irritable reaching after fact and reason. In the same way that chameleons are negative for color because they can change it, Keatsian poets negate the self and the identity. Negative capability is not a name for a specific thing, but rather a process, a way of feeling or of knowing or of being. Like the negative pole of an electric current, negative capability is passive, receptive. The ability to stand in the midst of chaos and not be touched. In the same way that the negative pole receives the current from the positive pole, the poet receives impulses from a world that is full of mystery and doubt, which cannot be explained, but which the poet can translate into art. And negative capability is not just for artists and poets, though in case it bears repeating, living abundantly is an art as well as a craft, both of which require practice. Negative capability might be thought of as the process of getting out of our own way and making space for mystery, disconnecting from our reassuring certainties, from our hyper-connected world, tuning into uncertainty, mystery, and doubt without trying to make sense of it at all. If you are more in tune with visual artists, this might remind you of the idea of white space, the idea that a piece of art is both the art that is created and the space that is created around it. Now, I don't know about you, but I am a person who needs a lot of white space. I have a very noisy head. It is very full, lots of thinking, lots of processing all the time. Stillness, silence, solitude. For me, these white spaces in life are not a luxury, but a necessity. And I don't think that I'm alone in needing space for breathing, for just being, for calming the soul and quieting the mind. I joke a lot about how many sermons I write while I'm floating in the pool. A little chilly for that right now, and there's no water in it. But when it's full, and that's really not a joke at all. That pool is a physical manifestation of stillness, the weightlessness, and going with the flow, reminding me to just be. And that's a place I find creativity and abundance. Now, stillness is easy when you are floating in a giant tub of water. It's the other hours of the day when it's harder to find, but it's there. Distinguished Professor Emeritus of Literature at the University of Portland, Louis Masson, writes about teaching. The conductor and composer Leonard Bernstein was often in search of the silence between notes, and I find those silences between the words that are the score of a class. I sometimes play a successful class back in my mind, slowly listening for the silences where insight and discovery sparked to life. And I play back not only the classes I teach, but also the classes in which I was taught. I hear the teacher's voice asking students to consider a line, a passage, and the hypothesis of the lecture. There is a pause while eyes turn to the book, while minds turn to the idea. In such pauses, light shines. Or there is the pause after an unexpected question. In those silent pauses, insight may emerge. The mind grapples, puzzles, grasps, and discovers. A class may move by fits and starts with as much energy expended in the pauses as in spoken exchanges. An exact transcript of the spoken words would be an incomplete record of what went on. Like a play script with the occasional note for pause or long pause. In life, as in art, so much may be said in silence. By using white space in our lives, we create space, balance, emphasis on what's important, and a feeling of peace that we cannot achieve in a cramped life. And there are many ways to find stillness. We can breathe. We can leave space intentionally in our schedule, sometimes on a good day. We can focus on one thing at a time, at least once in a while. We can remove the clutter, be it literal or psychological or metaphorical. We can slow down. We can savor. We can pay attention. There are many things stillness can be. Like Hallie said earlier, there's a lot of words that are connected to stillness. Silence, solitude, listening, spaciousness, rest. But most importantly, stillness is. In a world of constant striving, measuring, planning, the experience of stillness is complete. You know when you are in stillness. And if you overthink it, it's gone. But stillness is necessary terrain for us to travel. Whether it be for the space of a breath or an hour, or one of those rare, precious opportunities where we can not just say hello to stillness, but rest there a while. When we practice stillness intentionally, it is more readily accessible when we need it the most. Iteration is a term they use in math, but it also applies beyond. Iteration is the repetition of a process in order to generate a sequence of outcomes. And each repetition of the process is a single iteration. And the outcome of each iteration is in the starting point of the next iteration. This is called the iterative process. And it's essential for creativity, vitality, renewal. And you can think of it sort of like the recycling symbol, right? Like a circle of arrows. And that process is you generate an idea, then you formulate your hypothesis, then you test your idea, and then you reflect on what has happened. And this is where you analyze the accuracy of the hypothesis you formulated, where you generate new ideas, where you might refine ideas that were lacking in the first place. And this reflection process is what leads to the next idea, the next iteration of the same process or cycle. I like this a lot because it points out that forward motion on the things we want in our lives, the things that are most important to us, requires not just the active thinking and the planning and the executing, but also the thinking about what has happened, so that when we go forward, we are not repeating the same cycle, but moving on to the next one. We were not made for stillness. We were made for motion, for action, for survival, evolutionarily speaking. But we were not made for this world. We made this world for ourselves. And in the making and in the doing, we have squeezed out places for unmaking. We have set aside the places for just being. In our never-ending quest for productivity, we have forgotten every rhythm needs a downbeat. Each inhalation an exhale. Each poem needs a pause, and every masterpiece its white space. These are the things we need to remember, to be mindful of once more. No is a complete sentence. I'm going to say that again. No is a complete sentence. Enough exists. Our culture is set up to be a nonstop barrage of stimulus, any way that we can press pause, reset our brains, take a breath, step away, be present to the moment. Any way we do this is an act of resistance. The path to more abundance, more creativity, more insight, and more clarity includes a little less of everything else. We started this homily with a poem, and I'm going to end by reading the same poem again. I invite you to listen for what you might need to find your stillness in the week to come. No one but me by the fire. My hands burning red in the palms, while the night wind carries everything away outside. All this petty worry, while the great cloak of the sky grows dark and intense round every living thing. What is precious inside us does not care to be known by the mind in ways that diminish its presence. What we strive for in perfection is not what turns us into the lit angel we desire. What disturbs and nourishes has everything we need. What we hate in ourselves is what we cannot know in ourselves, but what is true to the pattern does not need to be explained. Inside everyone is a great shout of joy, waiting to be born. Even with the summer so far off, I feel it grown in me, now and ready to arrive in the world. All those years listening to those who had nothing to say. All those years forgetting how everything has its own voice to make itself heard. All those years forgetting how easily you can belong to everything simply by listening. And the slow difficulty of remembering how everything is born from an opposite and miraculous otherness. Silence and winter has led me to that otherness. So let this winter of listening be enough for the new life I must call my own. What words speak to you from this poem? What words will lead you to find your own stillness?